Hey guys, welcome back. So now my mind is blown because it all makes so much sense now. And through the course of these next couple videos, I will do my best to make it make sense for you guys as far as all these different dimensions that we've been talking about here on the Justice League playlist, to where recently we've seen a clearer connection to them in the previous Crisis events and also Dark Nights Metal. But from here forward, it's also going to start making connections with Doomsday Clock. And for that reason, from here on both playlists, I'll be doing a bit of cross-referencing in hope of giving you guys a better understanding of all this. But first, we gotta talk about Batman getting ready to kill everybody. So if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so first things first, just jumping right into it, there are 4 words that I want you to keep in your mind throughout the course of these next few videos, with the first word out of these 4 being hope, because as long as hope exists, there is an answer or a way back from any type of crisis or calamity, but this is only possible through hope. And so also think of these 4 like 2 sides of the same coin. On this same first side, you also have, with hope, justice, because when you equip justice with hope, the possibilities of a better outcome, they truly become unlimited. But that is only when you apply justice to hope, only when they're applied together, because individually hope can sit dormant for years with absolutely nothing happening, and alone hope is left ineffective. And that's what makes justice so important, because hope is like the bullet and justice is the gun. And I'm sorry, Batman, it was the first thing that came to mind, so you know, hey. But I say that to make the point that hope is the ammunition of justice. They work hand in hand, they need each other, much like how faith without works is dead. You can have all the faith in the world, but if you do no work, nothing will happen. And so now on the other side of this coin, you have the perpetual, which by definition is the unchanging. And when things don't change, they don't flourish, they don't grow, they remain stagnant, like the still force, for example. And so now with the perpetual, which is the enemy of hope, because if there is no change, there is no hope, the perpetual also needs an enforcer, the same way that hope needed justice. And for that reason, the enforcer of the perpetual is none other than Doom. And for this reason, if you arm Doom with the perpetual, then that is when the purpose of Doom is fulfilled. Because if you think about it, nothing is certainly doomed unless it is on a perpetual, unchanging course. And this is why, much like how hope needs justice and vice versa, the perpetual needs Doom and Doom needs the perpetual. And hopefully that made sense for you guys. And I'll revisit that whole concept through the course of the next couple videos, including this one, because to really bring it home with everything that we've been talking about thus far, and hopefully make it as crystal clear as possible, I've previously given examples of both sides of this coin already, because everything with your Justice League and the 6th dimension, for the most part, this entire narrative has dealt with the perpetual and the Doom, and doing so with the brilliant narrative of Perpetua, who had been given power from the source to create multiverses that would flourish in hope to eventually meet justice. But because she did not want to die ever, she created the perpetual multiverse, which was her literally using the power given to her for the opposite intention, and literally forming this multiverse to which at its birth it was doomed to become a multiverse that was unchanging, which is the exact opposite of what the source had intended. Because before making this decision on her own, each multiverse was made to have the potential to become anything, and when she took that free will away, she doomed that multiverse from any hope of changing or growing. But also in doing so, this also birthed the 7 energies that go along with Doom. And in doing so, when a multiverse is designed to go right and you make it go left, all of a sudden you've taken the Speed Force and you've created the Still Force. And this is why the energies that Perpetua has unlocked, or at least the ones that we've seen Lex Luthor discover so far, but this is why they're all an inversion of the 7 natural energies which have originated from the source. And so now if you haven't seen the last video as far as the origin of the source wall, you've got to see that, because I know good and well if you haven't, none of this is going to make sense, and from here forward the slope is going to get even more slipperier. And so now getting to the other side of that coin as far as the hope and the justice, and trust me, we're going to get to Batman, because what the Forger told him, okay, we're gonna get to Batman. But as far as hope and justice, real quick, I did a video about 2 or 3 months ago about Dr. Manhattan being blind to hope, and I called it Entering the Mind of Dr. Manhattan, because I really wanted to focus on, in that video, the difference between seeing the future and seeing hope. And in the upcoming Doomsday Clock video, I'll go further into depth into the difference between the two, and why Dr. Manhattan couldn't see anything in existence after hope punched him in the face. And I'm kind of already giving the answers throughout this video, and I'll strive to make it clearer and clearer as I proceed to give you what you need. Alright, so now with keeping those 4 words in mind and getting into the implementation of how all of this is connected, and I want to start picking up where we left off with Batman teaming up with the Forger of Worlds. Because like I talked about before, out of every possibility that the Forger of Worlds had seen, only the Batman from Earth Zero, to whom the World Forger even tells, like, look, you have one of the greatest strategic minds in existence. And with the World Forger being able to see every outcome of Hope, he understands that this Batman from Earth Zero is the only one, the only person who can make the decision with trillions of lives in the balance that will not end with doom. And while they're here at the World Forger's tower, which is located in the 6th dimension, Batman tells the World Forger, like, okay, give me the facts, because in order for him to do the right thing and even create new possibilities, he has to have all the factual information that he can get. Because at the end of the day, with Batman being the greatest strategic mind of all of existence, strategy is completely worthless without intel, which is another thing that makes Batman super dangerous, because it's not like he knows everything. But if you take one of the greatest strategic minds in existence and combine that with the greatest detective who ever lived, now all of a sudden this great strategic mind has value, because not only is he great at forming strategies, but he's also great at finding the information which is relevant and needed to form the right strategy. And in this conversation with the World Forger, Batman's doing a bit of investigating and probing with certain questions. Like, he asks him, if I choose this route, what is it that you want me to do? Because as far as the World Forger, he wants to save the multiverse, and his idea of saving the multiverse is presenting it to the source in a corrected type of state, and doing so by having Batman kill trillions of people in order to make it seem perfect at judgment. And the World Forger makes the argument to Batman that these people that he's quote-unquote killing aren't truly dying, because when it's said and done, they won't truly be destroyed, but they'll rather merge with their future selves, which is why the World Forger led with showing them what the potential of the future could be. And part of doing this would also include Batman persuading the Justice League, to whom at this current time he's sent over to Future Apokolips, to which essentially is your prison of uncompliance. But the World Forger tells Batman that he needs to do this because this is part of how his purpose unfolds. But then of course Batman then asks, what about Superman? Because Superman wasn't even given the opportunity like anyone else from the Justice League, and mainly because the Forger knew that Superman would not stop at anything to combat a plan that involved killing trillions. And it's here that the Forger tells Batman that he has Superman locked away in a custom-made galaxy with enough suns close enough just to keep him alive. And almost as a test, if you will, the Forger tells Batman that he wants him to move these suns away, which would presumably kill Superman. But it's here that the World Forger tells Batman that this Superman is different, because if Batman were to see this through, when everyone else dies, they would merge with their future selves, which would subtract a period of time, but this would be the World Forger's way of trying to trick the source. But in the case of Superman, this wouldn't happen, and this is what makes him different, because the Forger tells Batman that this Superman, unlike any other, this is the Prime Superman. And when he says this, it just takes me back to Superboy Prime and how his origin is so similar to where Superman is right now. But the World Forger goes on to explain that this Superman is different, and mainly because his cells still retain energy even after his death, to where even more practically, Hope truly never dies. And because of this, after the suns are moved away, the World Forger tells Batman that he would have to absorb Superman into himself, to where Superman would continue to exist inside of the World Forger, conscious but trapped forever, which really isn't living if you ask me, but this is the way that the World Forger believes that it needs to be done. And to kind of help Batman make this decision, the World Forger also tells him that in the end it always comes down to these two, and in every rendition of every reality, the facing off of these two in some form or fashion, it leads to the destruction of that reality. And in this case, this is the direct revelation of why Mxyzptlk and Bat-Mite are facing off against each other and tearing apart the fabrics of reality in a battle that represents the battle between the will to win versus the faith or the hope of a happy ending. And as I'm sure you guys have put together at this point, if this fight gets to play out, and if hope and justice destroy each other, then all we're left with is perpetual doom. And so from here, Batman, acknowledging that everything that's happened to him in his entire life has essentially built up to the decisions that he makes in this moment, and from here he begins to implement what he truly needs to do in order to get this outcome, to where in this moment, step one is moving the suns away out of the reach of Superman and passing the test that the World Forger has given him. And you can tell for Batman, like, even though it's what he needs to do in this moment, it doesn't necessarily make it that much easier to do. But fortunate enough, with him doing this at this current time, he does know that he's able to pass this test and not truly kill Superman. And poor Superman, because from his perspective, everything is just going wrong and wrong all over again. Because at this moment, he's truly living his greatest fear of being alone and seemingly hopeless. And so now, as far as the Justice League, who at this point is still on Future Apocalypse, and they have under restraints that are inhibiting their powers, so to where they would normally be able to bust out, at this point in time they're in constraints and unable to do so. But along with them being sent here, you also have the son of Kendra and Martian Manhunter, who is able to avoid being apprehended by using mental blocks to hide himself from the other guards. And when he sneaks in to speak to the other members of the Justice League, John tells him that he can use that same power to bust them out. But to do so, he has to focus on a strong feeling, whether it be love, fear, anger, or sadness, and he chooses anger. And the fuel to his anger that he focuses on is the fact that this world that they are in, that it is not justice, and is quite frankly the furthest thing from it. And with him using this to fuel the blast which freed everybody, it kind of shows us some of that potential of why Perpetua chose the Martians to be one of the ingredients in her perfect soldiers. But when this is done and all the Justice League is released from their prisons, a few other people got released too, but the messed up part is they're still in their restraints, so they kind of had to hightail it for a little bit because it was them versus this whole block on Apocalypse, which wouldn't go well without their powers. But after being chased into a dead end, they're met with the arrival of a ship that swoops in to rescue them, and on this ship is none other than the future resistance, the Legion of Doom. And like, once again, in a very different way, the Legion of Doom saves the day. But this future Legion of Doom is a bit different than the one we had seen back in the third dimension back on Earth, and mainly because they're being led by Darkseid. And so real quick, because I know this future stuff is a little weird, but just as a reminder, this madness going on in the sixth dimension, it is littered with versions of people who are potentially the future best versions of themselves, which kind of explains your whole Darkseid being here kind of thing, because even though there is only one Darkseid throughout the multiverse, here in the sixth dimension, it is very possible to see multiple Darkseids, because even though each multiverse has one Darkseid, there are still countless other multiverses that have one Darkseid apiece, to where this one specifically just happens to be one that the Forger wanted locked up on Apocalypse, but this particular group got away. And as far as these rulers of this current future Apocalypse, who are hot on their tail in pursuit, their ships, their weapons, their technology, they've all been derived from Kryptonian tech. So needless to say, Darkseid and the others are not getting away, because these future Apocalypse ships are fully spec'd out. But the thing is, at this point, this particular Legion of Doom, and I more so think of them like as a resistance, kind of like your Resistance of Doom, but this group, their purpose is not to necessarily get away, but at least create enough room to take the Justice League to a jump point, and upon reaching that jump point, the Justice League can then be reunited with Batman. And they barely get the League to that point. Like, the ship is blown up, and not completely, but it's hit pretty bad. But when they get them to the jump point, and barely, because John Stewart had to help out and kind of guide them through a protective construct. But with doing so, it was funny kind of watching them part ways, because you have John Stewart and Sinestro kind of telling each other good luck and thank you. Diana and Cheetah are like, you know, best of luck to the other warriors, sisters in arms. But Grodd and Barry are just like, I still hate you. Which takes keeping it real to a whole nother dimension, literally. And so now back to Batman at the World Forger's tower. The World Forger pretty much informs Batman that this battle between Mxyzptlk and Bat-Mite, which is tearing reality apart, it's going to cause his hammer to ignite. And so for this reason, Batman has to take the seat, which is the most powerful seat in existence, and then eventually don the final Batsuit. And when they enter this room, they come across the Sunbox, to where this chair was built by a future version of Batman who had made it out of Element X, much like what we had seen in Dark Knight's Metal when the Batman Who Laughs made his attempts to harvest it from Cyborg, and it's also found in other things like mother boxes, so on and so forth. But Batman used this, with it having the ability of showing him other people's hearts. He used it to create this chair, and the chair he used to create the final Batsuit, because these would be the tools that would help him fulfill the changing of minds of the Justice League and potentially saving the multiverse. But smack dab in the middle of this how-to tutorial, there's an explosion attack in the armory of the World Forger, which was orchestrated by the future Legion of Doom rebellion, who this whole time had a mole infiltrate this tower on a suicide mission to destroy the final Batsuit. Batsuit. And so not long after this takes place, the Justice League make their way to the tower, to where at this point in time, the World Forger has been expecting them, and he's brought the future versions of themselves to fight them off. And I gotta say, at this point, the past versions, they're pretty confident, and mainly because the Doom Legion, Rebellion, whatever you want to call them, they told the heroes about the mole and the presumptuous destruction of the final Batsuit. And so at this point, standing face to face with the World Forger, like the guy who has built reality with his bare hands, like when this happens, they're met with the crashing arrival of Batman in the final Batsuit. And what's crazy is like Barry's like, Batman, you're here to help us, right? And Batman's just like, sorry Barry, it's time to imagine a different ending. And I can just imagine Barry looking back like, okay Batman, I totally trust you. Kind of. It's crazy. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts and any questions down in the comments below. But just as a heads up, in the next video when we talk Doomsday Clock, I'll be pulling a lot of references from what we learned from Justice League as far as the history of the multiverse in order to clear up a lot of things that we're learning within Doomsday Clock. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Leave your thoughts below and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.